Hello and welcome back to the channel if you've been here before, or welcome if you have the pleasure of being the first time viewer of this channel. So when we last left off in the previous video, which if you haven't seen, I will post a link to it in the description below, I mentioned I have been commissioned, so to say, to build a deck for somebody who goes to my local game store. So this video will be a very quick rundown of that deck. So if you do not know, not too long ago, Wizards of the Coast, the makers of Magic the Gathering, they released a Lord of the Rings set, which was just a total smash. It was just a great set. Lots of really good, powerful cards came from this set. I'll tell you that because today I'm going to go over the deck I built for a gentleman at my local game store. And it's the Lord of the Nazgul. Now, I typically like to build decks that are a little bit more budget friendly, budget conscious, things like that. He likes to build things as powerful as they can be. We're pretty close to that level. He gave me a $1,000 budget to build the deck, and at the time of build in this recording, as you can see down here, we are at $938.48. So why Lord of the Nazgul? Well, Lord of the Nazgul is a 3 blue-black legendary creature, Wraith Noble. It has flying. Wraiths you control have protection from ring bearers. His ability is what has me very intrigued to build this deck. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 3/3 black Wraith creature token with menace. Then, if you control 9 or more Wraiths you control have a base power toughness 9 until end of turn. So, this is kind of what we call a spell slinger style. We're pretty light on creatures overall because we're wanting to keep the instants and sorceries rolling to start making more and more bodies and just kind of taking over the battlefield with the way that everything works out. So every instant and sorcery we cast allows us to just keep everything storming. So with that in mind, we have things like the Archmage Emeritus. He's a human wizard, and he doesn't really fit any kind of particular hole for the deck, so to say, except for the fact that he has an ability called Magecraft, which means whenever you cast it or copy an instant and or sorcery spell, you get to draw a card. Well, due to our commander, we want to spell sling like crazy, so that enables us to draw cards while we're throwing instants and sorceries out. And kind of a backup one from the recent set Foundations is the Archmage of Runes. Again, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you get to draw a card. Now, his ability is a little different because he doesn't count if you copy that spell, but we're not really copying anything. And then you have his other passive ability is an instant or sorcery spell will cost 1 less to cast. So he kind of gives us a reduction on things that we're going to cast so that we can try and get 2 or 3, 4 in a turn instead of just 1 or 2. Changing Outcast here. He's in here because he's a cheap 1-drop creature. He can't block, but he can't be stopped either. So what makes him unique is the fact that he's a changeling, so this card is every creature type at all times when he's on the battlefield. So if you have enough wraiths, he becomes all of a sudden a 9/9 unblockable creature that can just hurt people. Then we have a couple other things like Dothi Voidwalker, just because anytime something goes to the graveyard from your opponent, you can exile it, and you can use Dothi to hopefully play something really good that's been basically stolen by Dolphy. This is an old card from Onslaught. It has seen a reprint, but I don't think it has like an updated border or anything to it. But this is called Filth, and he has Swamp Walk, and then uh, as long as he's in your graveyard and you control a swamp, creatures you control have Swamp Walk. Now, what Swamp Walk actually is it's very, very cheeky if you actually look at it this way. What anything with a certain island with a certain land walk, in this case Swamp Walk, means that if this is in the graveyard, or if I even play it, um, then that means if you control a swamp, you cannot stop my creature from dealing damage to you. You cannot block it because you have a swamp. So with with enough ring wraiths and this in the graveyard and you controlling a swamp, uh, spoiler alert, there is a way to make everybody have swamps. So it basically makes your creatures unblockable. Mirkwood Bats, anytime you make or sacrifice a token, everybody's going to lose life. It's just kind of an incremental thing because every time you cast an instant or sorcery, you're gonna, make a wraith. Uh, we have all 9 different printings of the Nazgul in here because a deck can have up to 9, even in Commander. They bend that rule, so all 9 Nazgul are in the deck. Wander right here. If you control an island and he is in the graveyard, kind of like Filth, he gives a special ability to all your creatures. In this case, he gives everything flying. Uh, very, very, very key card when it comes to doing anything tribal like this. This is, if you don't know, this is called a tribal deck because everything is the same or similar creature type. Granted, we're not really running that many creatures. This allows you to come into play and choose a creature type, and then as you can read, when it ETBs, you get to choose a creature type. And it's now that chosen type in addition to each other types. So in this case, it'd be a Wraith Golem. And then the triggered ability of another creature you control, if the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. So to put that in perspective, if we have Roaming Throne out, our commander comes out or has been out by the time Roaming Throne comes out, so we name Wraith, okay, and then we cast a simple 1 mana draw a card spell. When our commander would say, hey, you cast an instant or sorcery, we're going to make a 3/3 Wraith. Roaming Throne says, hey, wait a minute, that is a Wraith triggering from some kind of ability, so do it again. So for 1 mana, you make 2 bodies. And in something like the Nazgul, it gets really, really, really dumb because they have Death Touch, and whenever a Nazgul enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. We don't really care about that. Might help speed up things a little bit with the Roaming Throne, but we're not really here for a ring tempts you deck. What we care about is whenever the ring tempts you, you can put a 1/1 counter on each wraith you control. So, to put in that perspective, if you have some wraiths out already, then when you cast something like this and the Roaming Throne is out, it would trigger twice. So the ring would tempt you 2 times, and you would be able to put 2 +1/+1 counters even on the tokens that your commander makes. So it gets a little wild and really dumb. Sedgemoor Witch, just because we're Spellslinger, we want a cheap way to keep bodies on the battlefield, so every time we cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, we are going to make a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. Just kind of a way to help keep bodies on the board while we finish setting up with our Nazgul and Roaming Throne kind of shenanigans that we're doing. Talrand's kind of the same thing. Every time we cast an instant or sorcery spell, we'll make a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. So it can help stop some flying threats, possibly. For our sorceries, we have 11 of them here, and we only have 19 creatures because we're very, very spell slinger heavy. So we have some card draw with Preordained, Ponder, Night's Whisper. Um, we have the ability to get some stuff that we need, particularly out of the deck, such as Diabolic Tutor and Demonic Tutor. Well, Diabolic Intent, Demonic Tutor. They allow us to go and find what we need. The only downside to Diabolic Intent, we have to sacrifice a creature, but between our Commander of the Witch and Talrand, we should have some bodies we can throw underneath the bus to go find something. Ring of Insight's also another way that we can not only trigger the Nazgul because the ring is going to tempt you, but we could go and find something with the same color identity as our commander, which in this case is blue and or green, blue and or black, sorry, and then we get to add it to our hand. It has to be a legendary creature, so really the only thing we can go get is Talrand, but it might come in handy. Temporal manipulation and time warp are just ways to take a couple of extra turns, so I'll get to why those are important here in just a minute. Toxic Deluge is just a way to clear the board of everything we don't want before we start going ham. Same thing with Race of Palisade, because we could choose a Wraith as the creature type and return all creatures that are not of the chosen type to their owner's hands. So if we have a really nice setup, but we can't punch through, we could choose Wraith, play this, bounce everything to everybody's hand that's not Wraith, and be able to swing and punch through, hopefully. Chain of Smog is the whole reason we have the extra turn spells in the deck. Because Chain of Smog targets a player to discard 2 cards from his or her hand. That player may copy that spell and may choose new targets for the copy. So the idea behind this is you want to target yourself and discard your hand. And you can keep targeting yourself infinite amount of times until you wish to stop and choose somebody else or anything along those lines. So the idea behind it is with Chain of Smog basically being cast for infinite amount of times, which in Magic rules you actually have to declare a number. You can't just say infinite. You actually have to declare a number. So let's say 1 trillion. So we do it for 1 trillion times. We would get 1 trillion 3/3 Black Wraith creature tokens into play. But they would all become 9/9s because we would have more than 9 of them in play. And that's just with the Commander and Chain of Smog going off. So the reason why there's extra turn spells is because Chain of Smog is a sorcery, so you could really only do it on your turn. So the best thing to do is, well, let's have an extra turn to take after that, so nobody has a chance to destroy what we've worked so hard to create. And to kind of protect that plan is a ridiculous amount of protection. We're running another couple sources of card draw here. This Cyclonic Rift, if you pay 7 mana instead of just 2 mana, it returns every non-land card back to everybody's hand but yours. Deadly Rollick allows us to exile any kind of creature that might be a problem. Vampire Tutor allows us to go and find a card that we need, put it on top of our deck. Optus, just another way to draw a card. And Reality Shift allows us to exile another creature that could be in our way. But we are running currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different counter spells to be able to protect what we're setting up and just win the game. Each counterspell does something really powerful, backbreaking. They're cheap, they're easy to use, and we just slam them in this deck. So, I did add a little bit of my flavor, a little bit of cheekiness to this deck. But here we have our artifact package. So to be a little bit cheeky, we have Helm of the Host, so we can actually start making extra copies of our commander. And triggering twice instead of just once, or 3 or 4 times if it manages to stay. I will say it like that because Helm of the Host usually eats a kill spell, rightfully so. That's a scary card to have. And it gets around something called the legendary rule because in Magic, if you cannot have two legendary permanents of the same name on your battlefield at the same time, a game check, if you will happen, and it says, "Hey, you have two Lord of the Nazgul on the battlefield. Pick one to keep, the other one has to go away." Well, with Helm of the Host, it allows you to make a non-legendary version of that creature, and it's a token of it with haste. Haste isn't particularly going to matter, I don't believe, but the fact that we get a non-legendary version of our commander is just so backbreaking. It's a lot of mana, it's a lot of work to get off, and I'm not sure if the card will stay into the deck or not, but I just thought it'd be a hilarious include to throw into the deck. We have some ways to draw some cards because everything has menace, and menace means you have to have two creatures blocking one. So, like, I could attack with my Wraith, and you can't just throw a 1/1 goblin in the way. You have to have two 1/1 goblins in the way to stop my attack. So, it gives us a chance to draw some cards from our creatures dealing combat damage to our opponents. It's not the best card draw, but it is a source of card draw. Not to mention, we could always tap one in a blue, tap this, and make creatures our opponents control attack if they're able to. So we can kind of force the attack, and either they'll come our way, and we can hopefully stop what's coming our way through either mass bounce or just having enough bodies to stop it, or they're going to go somewhere else because they're afraid their stuff is going to die or something bad could happen. Another win condition I decided to put into the deck is a mill strategy. So if something happened to our extra turns, they got stopped, countered, whatever, if we have the extra mana, we can play one of these two pieces and still win the game. So Alter the Brood is whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into their graveyard. So for every time we make a Wraith creature token, or even a land for turn, anything that's a permanent coming onto our battlefield, we get to have everybody put the top card of their deck right to their graveyard. So that's always a good thing. So if you have Chain of Smog, your commander, and this on the battlefield, you should be able to win the game. There are some decks that run what we like to call the Shuffle Titans, or the really big scary Eldrazi, because when they go to the graveyard, they shuffle back into the deck. So if you fight somebody like that who has an effect similar to that, because there's a handful of cards that have a similar ability, it'd be very, very hard to mill them out. In which case, I mean, make a big old army and just turn it sideways, I guess. Alter Dementia is kind of the same way. Only difference is you have to sacrifice that creature, and in my opinion, it's a little bit faster way because you can sacrifice the creature, and then you have somebody of your choosing uh, put that many cards from the top of their deck into the graveyard where it's going to be that creature's power. So if it's just a 3/3 Wraith, they're getting rid of 3 cards. But if we went infinite, basically, made a trillion tokens, I mean, they're 9/9s now. So instead of just 3, you're getting rid of 9 cards. So I thought this would be a fun way to have for some kind of backup win condition, is kind of a mill strategy. It's not something a lot of people see in commanders, so it's a little hard for them to kind of protect and defend against that. Moving on, we have our enchantments. We're running really light on them. We only run Mystic Remora and the Kindred Discovery. So you could take out like Bided of Thassa and or Helm of the Host and put another one here, which would be the Rhystic Study. And depending which version I could throw it in and it could still fit this budget of $1,000. But the Mystic Remora is probably one of the best one drops you could ever hope to have. 1 blue mana, play it, and then whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, I may draw a card unless you pay 4 more mana for it. So if you were to try and drop your Soul Ring and I went first, you could drop your Soul Ring if you're going after me, but I'm going to draw a card because you cannot pay that 4 mana. Late in the game, not such a great card to see. Maybe you hold on to it, maybe you play it anyway. You never know. Um, and it does have a slight downside in the fact that it has a cumulative upkeep of pay a mana. Now, the way that's going to work, if you've never seen this card before, so you play it, comes right back around to you, okay? So then on your turn, you can either pay 1 mana of any color to keep it, or if you don't, it goes to the graveyard. Now, let's say you pay your 1 mana to keep it. So now you're understanding, okay, I paid my mana to keep it. Well, just remember, when it comes back around to your turn again, being that it's a commutative upkeep, it now is going to cost additional mana every single time you go to keep it. So you paid 1, you kept it, comes back around for you again. So you don't just pay 1 this time, now you pay 2 mana. So you pay 2 mana, you're going to keep it, you're going to hopefully draw 2, 3, 4 cards. Well, maybe that wasn't enough. So then you pay 3 mana to keep it again, and so on and so forth. So every time you want to keep it, it costs you an additional 1 than it did before. At some point, it's probably not worth it to keep it. Probably 3 mana, 4's pushing it, especially start of the game. Kind of depends on board state too, and a whole bunch of other determining factors can determine all that. So it's a fun card to have, and it does a lot of work. A lot of your higher level play will see that. So it's worth the include if you ask me. Another card in here that helps us draw so many cards is Kindred Discovery. This beautiful enchantment, whenever it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. In this case, it'll be Wraith. And whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to draw a card. So you do have to be careful. You don't want to drop this on a turn you're trying to go infinite. You will draw your entire deck and you will lose. Because it is not a may effect, you have to do it. And we don't really have a good way to bounce it. So we don't really have a way to get rid of that enchantment. So don't go planning on going infinite if that is out. You may be more of the grind them out kind of game. Maybe somebody will have the misfortune of think they're doing a great job by exiling this and going, haha, now you can't draw any more cards. And you could go, well, actually, I was waiting on that because now I just go infinite and win. So there's some options like that. Our land package is kind of average, I guess you could say. The only thing we don't have is the OG dual land. That's because it would have made this like a $1,500 deck alone, just because that land's $600-700, even with it in a bad condition. But we got Ancient Tomb to help speed up mana. Cavern of Souls we can name Wraith, so our stuff can't be countered. City of Brass, Command Tower, Mana Confluence, Reflecting Pool, and Forbidden Orchard all add mana that we need to get our game plan up and off the ground. They add either blue or black mana. They can even add other colors if we absolutely had to, but we shouldn't have to. But Mana Confluence, City of Brass, they actually hurt us when we tap them, so worth the price if you ask me. Dark Slick Shores, just a great dual color land to have. Demolition Field. So every deck I build, I have at least one land, or try to have at least one way to blow up at least a land. Um, and that is actually because of the fact that one of the guys in my group who's been playing since the game had come out, basically, he runs a land called the Tabernacle of Pendervale. If you've never heard of it, if you've never seen it, trust me, it takes one time to play against it and you will never forget it. Because, simply put, the Tabernacle makes it so all of your creatures, and his creatures too, every creature on the battlefield has an upkeep cost of 1. So it's kind of like your Mystic Remora here, but it's not commutative. It's just either pay 1 or blow up your board. So in a token army strategy that this deck kind of is going for, a Tabernacle of Pendravel cripples us, just cripples us. It doesn't matter how many tokens we have if we can't pay the mana to keep them. So because of that, Demolition Field, Field of Ruin, Ghost Quarter, anything like that, I like to have at least one in every deck because you just never know when you might need to blow up something. There's also another land out there that's kind of a pain called Glacial Chasm. Uh, that's a whole different strategy for a deck you're fighting, but simply put, you cannot damage them. So again, if I have a million billion creatures, it doesn't mean anything if I can't damage them. I have no way to get rid of that stupid land, so what am I going to do? Well, Demolition Field. Goodbye. Mystic Sanctuary allows us to buy back an instant or sorcery card from our graveyard back on top, but only if we control 3 or more islands when this comes into play. Morphic Pool is just another dual land. Same thing with Shipwreck, Marsh, Watergrave, Sunken Hollow, Underground River, just kind of a cheaper, more budget-friendly version of Underground Sea. It's not able to be what we call fetched, but it at least does what we need to. I mean, granted, it hurts us when we choose to make a blue or black mana out of it, but that's okay. It's a price to pay. Undercity Sewers, great utility land. So we can, if there's another basic or something on top that we don't want, we could grab this, put it into play, and go, hey, there's a basic on top. Chuck that to the graveyard. Let's find something better. Aldawara is kind of a removal spell. It can actually hit our Kindred Discovery if we need it to, because it doesn't say opponent. It just says return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. So we have a single way to bounce it if we absolutely have to. And the way that would work is you would want to find a way to start your chain going, and at some point interact with that by bouncing it, and then you should be able to break your loop of drawing your whole deck. Gloomlake Verge is another dual land. It came from the new Dustborn set. You can add a blue, but if you get a black if you control an island or a swamp. Well, we have 7 swamps and 7 islands, not including some of the dual lands in here like Watergrave, Undercity Sewers, so in a Sunken Hollow. So we have options. We can go and trigger that. Polluted Delta is the only fetch land in the deck. I didn't see a need to put a whole lot into it. It just allows us to go and find what we need out of our blue-black sources. So typically I like going for anything that comes into play tapped first with something like this, if I can help it, because then it's not going to hurt my tempo as much. I want to go ahead and get the tap land out of the way versus later in the game going, oh man, I really needed this to be an untapped land. Urza's Cave is a really hilarious way to instantly go find like Demolition Field so that we can get rid of an issue that's on the battlefield, or even Mystic Sanctuary if we need to go and find that to get like Temporal Trespass back on top of the deck or something. So maybe we do that at instant speed on the end of somebody's turn because we know we're fixing to get the setup for the win. Uh, well, probably not on their turn unless we have another way to draw the card. Because if we're going Chain of Smog, we'll have to discard it. So probably need to do it on our turn. Pop this by paying 3 and tap it. Go find this, put it on top of the deck, and then go. Well, this comes into play, and we put uh, time stretch, time walk, any kind of thing like that. In this case, the 2 extra turn spells that we have back on top of the deck, and then allows us to uh, be ready to go. We should be able to draw a card at somehow, some way. We have quite a few ways to draw cards in this deck, so we can hopefully pop off with our extra turn. Lastly, is this wonderful Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. Now, Urborg allows us to have it come into play and make every land a swamp in addition to its other types. So that means if Filth is in our graveyard, and we have this, everything is a swamp, which means all of our stuff has Swamp Walk, which means you can't stop it, and turning things sideways we go. So it's a pretty cheeky card to have in the deck when you have Filth, and Urza's Cave can go find this and put it right into play. So like the cheeky thing you could do is declare attackers and go, okay, before we move to blockers, I want to use Urza's Cave to go find Urborg, and then it's going to come into play, so now you can't block my stuff, and you're dead. It gets really, really cheeky when you do things like that. The total mana base is going to be 35, 36, including what they call an MDFC, which is a module dual face card, and the only card in here like that is Sink It to the Stupor. Overall, the deck seems pretty good. I have not built it in paper yet, but you can sit here and just run through some trial hands. One reason I really enjoy Moxfield is because of that. We get a nice look at our mana curve here. We peak at 3. We got quite a few things at 3, but that's really it. It shows you these funny stats over here that always make me giggle. That we are pretty much guaranteed to always be able to play our Pact and Negation and our Lotus Petal any point of time because, well, they cost 0 mana to play. If you expand this, you can see some of the more expensive cards I don't have in the deck because they just push it a little bit above the budget constraint that he asked for this build. Like the Rhystic Study, the One Ring, 2 really great sources of card draw. Orcish Bowmasters, a great way to just snipe off goblins, elves, and other little things. Especially for anybody that thinks that they could draw extra cards with any one of these other abilities. And then Fairy Mastermind, so it kind of pairs with the Bowmaster. If you're drawing extra cards, I'm gonna punish you because now I'm gonna steal those draws for myself as well. But they could be quickly swapped in. It wouldn't take anything for them to be swapped in. Moxfield also allows you to get a sample hand, so we can see like this would be a hilarious turn 1 start. We're getting our commander out pretty quick, but we're not really doing much other than that. We got some protection up here. We can have a Nazgul and a Soul Ring. So if we were to draw another card, we're hitting another land, and then finally a Brainstorm. We could draw 1, 2, 3. My lord, we are flooded. So I probably would have shipped that hand because we weren't really going anywhere. We weren't really doing anything. This is probably a little bit better. We have a couple of Nazgul, some removal here, a counterspell, and Talrand's just decent. So we could play a land, have counterspell ready, play a land. They don't know, what else we have. So we might be in trouble now. yeah, we would be in trouble. We probably would have had to discard something, probably Talaran, play the prismatic lens, and then we can go and do some other things. I don't know if we really need to use the Ring of Insight. Probably drop a Nazgul, drop another Nazgul. So, I mean, you can see how the deck could potentially play. That would have been a sketchy hand to keep, but I think it would have been fairly keepable. Now, this definitely looks like a very keepable hand. We have Exotic Orchard and Swamp, Signet, Mindstone, so we have a couple of options that we can keep things going. So, we will play a land, and then we can well, we would draw our card. Yeah, play for Forbidden Orchard, pass the turn. Draw another card, play the Swamp. Probably the Demure Signet. Then we're going to play probably Mindstone into Prismatic Lens. So we've got quite a bit of mana up pretty quickly. We could actually play Wonder if we felt like it. Use Preordained to scry and draw some cards. The next turn, we can actually use Diabolic Intent to eat the Wander and go find a card that we need and go from there. So this is just a couple of sample hands. And if you actually want to go through and learn how to play the deck, you can actually click down here and hit playtest, and it'll show you everything here. I mean, you can change your sleeves and stuff like that. But you can literally just sit here and run through the deck over and over and over and over and over and over and get a pretty good feel of what the deck's trying to do and how it actually works. But that is the Lord of the Nazgul. And I'm very anxious to see on how it actually works so that it can be fine-tuned with whatever budget he has. It has a lot of room, I think, to make it his own if that's what he wants to do, or really upgrade and put some money into it if that's what he wants to do as well. So I thought it was a pretty fitting build. The budget and everything is within reach, I believe, of what he said. So there you have it. This is the Lord of Nazgul with my oddball little twist to it to just try to control the board and then surprise our opponents with a uh-oh, I win kind of thing. Because I really don't think they're going to see these two cards coming out of the deck and see them coming. I don't think they're ready for as much interaction we're going to have to just say no to a lot of things. And in the meantime, we're just kind of slowly building up our boards, just take over the game. I really think as long as Chain of Smog is still an option, I think that's our best way to win this game and just clear everything that we possibly could have. But this is the Lord of the Nazgul. This has been my run through of my deck build of this card and how I think it could be a lot of fun to build and run. I don't believe it's too overbearing. It's not too powerful, but it does have a lot that it has going for it. So we will see. Maybe I'll do another video later if he ever actually goes through and buys and builds this, and give you all an update on how well it did. But this has been the Voodoo Dragon on the Voodoo Dragon channel. Don't forget to rub that belly for mana, like, subscribe, comment, share, ring that bell, do all the things that make the noise. And I will see you all with another video later.